If you listen to the internet, you'd probably think that The Last of Us Season 2 is the worst thing ever made. Just like when the game came out, there is now another public outcry surrounding this release. Some people don't like that Joel dies, others don't like that Ellie is gay, which still baffles me after all of this time, and some of the changes made throughout the season have drawn criticism as well. But is this show really as bad as people say it is? Is it worthy of audience scores that are this low? No, obviously not. So I am going to attempt to do the seemingly impossible. I am going to try and have a civil and respectful conversation about The Last of Us Season 2 by analyzing both what does work and what doesn't. Now, I have a pretty unique history with The Last of Us game series. I've played the first game 4 or 5 times, and in my opinion, it's a strong 10 out of 10. Top 5 game of all time for me. So my hype level was through the roof for the second game. When it finally came out, I was actually living with a friend in LA who had worked on the game. I took the day off from my job on the Friday it came out, and I finished the second game in one weekend over the course of about 30 to 40 hours. And I think my reaction was the same as a lot of people who played it. I thought the gameplay had evolved in all of the right ways. The combat was absolutely brutal, but the story was a bit weaker than the original. But over time, as I've let the game stew in my mind, I've gained an appreciation for the story decisions and twists Naughty Dog threw at us, and I really got excited to see them put on screen. The amount of time I had to keep Joel dying a secret from my girlfriend felt unbearable, but ultimately when that episode came around, the payoff was worth it, and I was just as excited to watch her watch Joel come back through the flashbacks. But all of that payoff from the second game isn't present here, and it's no secret that this season only covers about half of the second game. So I want to review how this season stands on its own 2 feet without the implications of what comes next. On one hand, I feel like it's even weaker than the second game was compared to the first. I feel like there are a lot of chemistry issues between Ellie and Dina that weren't present in the game. This season is supposed to be inherently darker, and any attempts at levity on their journey come at the expense of Ellie feeling like her heart isn't in it as much as it is in the game. But on the other hand, I think they actually improved certain elements of the story. I think the fact that Ellie and Joel have the conversation about Salt Lake City on the porch instead of actually traveling back there is much more realistic, and bringing Jesse into the story felt much more organic this time around. So this season left me feeling very conflicted, and I'll work through those emotions in this video, but honestly, at my core, I'm happy with it. My heart also isn't as tied to the second game story as it is to the first, so maybe I'm just feeling generous because I care less about the result. But before we go through episode by episode to talk about what worked and what didn't, please like this video and subscribe if you like what you've seen so far. And if you're one of those weirdos who hates the game solely because gay people exist, you can stay unsubscribed. Feel free to throw a dislike or a comment though. The engagement helps. Okay, so let's go back to episode 1 and evaluate how this second season started. Immediately, I was thrown off because we meet Abby right at the beginning, and she's like, "I'm going to kill Joel," which to me ruined all of the suspense of meeting that character the way we did in the game. If you're watching this review without having played the game, you do meet Abby during the snowstorm outside of Jackson, but you don't know her intentions until right before she kills Joel. That scene where his leg gets shot with the shotgun smacks you across the face when you see it in the game, but in the show I feel like there isn't much surprise. I was also expecting Joel to die in episode 1, so when that didn't happen, I couldn't help but feel like episode 1 felt like too much needless setup. There were a lot of scenes that could have gotten cut in my opinion, but I do think that they did the kiss between Ellie and Dina really faithfully. The scene where Joel comes out of nowhere to protect Ellie felt cathartic, and when Ellie yells at him afterward, you really feel for Joel. The show captures the element of intrigue as to why Ellie's mad at Joel really well, and you just want them to make up already. But of course that doesn't happen, or at least we don't see it happen until later. But episode 2 had a lot more to show us, and I think it worked to varying degrees of success. The show adds in a storyline of an infected attack on Jackson, which isn't in the game, and it also swaps in Dina with Joel, whereas Tommy was with Joel in the game. I liked the attack on Jackson. I don't think it detracted anything from the main moment of the episode, but I didn't like the Tommy and Dina swap. In the game, Dina is with Ellie throughout the snowstorm, and they end up having sex while they're snowed in. It allows their relationship to develop more quickly than it does in the show, so when Dina decides to accompany Ellie cross-country, it feels like something she'd actually do. But in the show, I didn't really believe that this version of Dina would travel with Ellie since they weren't as deeply romantically linked by this point. I do think the sequence where Abby meets Joel was done really well, and the fact that she reanimates all of those infected will make audiences hate her even more, which I love. And honestly, I thought Joel's death scene was handled beautifully as well. I loved that Abby's friends really didn't want any part of it, and you can see that Abby is overcome with the need for revenge. The only thing I didn't like was when she put the sharp end of the broken golf club in Joel's neck. That last strike didn't have as much impact as it had in the game, but that's just a small gripe. In episode 3, I feel like they spent way too much time on the will she go or will she stay storyline. In the game, Ellie feels like she's acting off of raw emotion. She felt angry. But in the show, she's too laissez-faire about the whole situation. Yes, she insists to Dina that she's going no matter what, but she's like smiling and cracking jokes, especially on their journey to the West. I don't mind that the show chose to flesh out their relationship more on the road. I think it could have worked in theory, but there was a huge barrier for me watching, just feeling like this version of Dina wouldn't have been there for Ellie at this stage in their relationship, or lack thereof relationship. I thought the intro of the scars was good, but in the end this felt like a very transition-y type episode. Episode 4 had a bit more meat on its bones, where obviously Josh Peck stole the show. No, but really. Isaac's intro was great, and the show does an amazing job of depicting him as heartless. We get the nice heartfelt moment when Ellie plays Take On Me, but by the end it's all action when Ellie and Dina come across the WLF bodies left by the scars. The tension as they get chased out of that building into the subway is palpable, and I think that might have been one of the best horror sequences the show has put out thus far. But when Ellie and Dina leave, they walk like 2 feet before they get into the theater and they just act like they're completely safe. Again, that's a small gripe, but still. So by this point in the episode, I was really happy with the portrayal of the events in the game. And I even liked the bite sequence where Dina looks like she might kill Ellie. But the end of the episode shocked me. They have sex, which works as a moment since they didn't have it back in Jackson, but Ellie's reaction to hearing that Dina is pregnant didn't sit well with me. I mean, it's cute that Ellie says she's going to be a dad, but she and Dina have not progressed to a place in their relationship where that's at all believable. They just confessed their feelings for each other, and sure, they may have been brewing for a while, but it just seems way too fast. Imagine sleeping with someone you're interested in just once, finding out they're pregnant from someone else, and then immediately being like, I can't wait to raise the baby with you. It just would never happen, right? And it doesn't happen in the game. Ellie and Dina are months into their relationship at this point, and Ellie is still kind of pissed when she finds out. She yells at Dina and is like, why did you come here knowing that you were pregnant? The whole mission is compromised. And that's the energy I felt like was missing from Ellie at the show in this point. She's smiling, making jokes, and doesn't seem nearly focused enough on the fact that she's here to murder everyone and anyone she can to get to Abby. So I needed to see that in episode 5. Thankfully I did, but it did feel a little bit like it was too little too late. I think episode 5 is great. The chemistry between Ellie and Dina feels better, their journey has a much more serious tone, and the interactions with the infected, the WLF, and the scars just feels unrelenting. As I said before, I was nervous that bringing Jesse in would feel a bit random, but I think it works better in the show than it did in the game. And ultimately, the episode works toward Ellie torturing Nina in a brutal sequence that's pretty unforgettable. But the fucking jump scare of Joel at the end felt so out of place, I just wish they hadn't included that. It would have felt so much more impactful to just start episode 6 on Joel and give fans that immediate elation. But him opening Ellie's door after that violent sequence just felt too soon. I wanted to sit in that moment of Ellie making a choice that she can't come back from, because that should have been the takeaway. But I couldn't stay mad for too long though, because when episode 6 came around, it was easily my favorite of the season. The chemistry between Bella and Pedro is just so much better than anything else we got this season. I think all of the game's flashbacks worked really well in this tight episode, and Pedro really acted his ass off. I think the additional scene of Joel's father added a really great arc for Joel that wasn't in the game. And I like that Ellie realized Joel's lie through his actions instead of having a dramatic chase all the way to Salt Lake City where Ellie hears a tape recording of what happened, which is how it goes down in the game. Overall, it was a beautiful episode. I might even rewatch that episode from time to time just to feel something. And finally, we move to episode 7, another episode that felt really well done. I'm a bit conflicted on how much they show at the end, but I'll get to that later. The episode starts with Ellie admitting to Dina what she did to Nora and what Joel did to the Fireflies. You can sense that Dina starts looking at her differently, and she tells Ellie that they should go back home. And I think in that moment, Ellie agrees. Ellie feels more conflicted in the show than she did in the game, and I like how this plays out throughout this episode specifically. We get a few scenes showcasing more of the relationship between Jesse and Ellie before Jesse gets popped. And those moments are pretty effective at showcasing the differences and similarities between their characters. These scenes do make the audience feel a bit closer to Jesse before, you know. But Ellie ultimately ends up reaching Owen and Mel and kills them both, only to find out that Mel is pregnant. They do this a bit different in the show than in the game, and I do think it feels more tragic here. But I will say, Ellie didn't kill the guard dog like she does in the game, and they didn't blow Shimmer to smithereens either, the cowards. But anyway, Bella Ramsey's acting really shines throughout this whole sequence, and she, Tommy, and Jesse go back to the theater. All is well for a few minutes before Tommy cries out and Jesse gets... And then we get a cut to black as Abby fires her gun, which I thought was interesting. In the game, we don't get that gunshot sound, we just get the cut to black. So I'm curious to see how they'll play that scene out when it's revisited in season 3. And I thought the episode was going to end there. But we get a POV switch to Abby in the last moments of the season, and the clock resets back to Seattle day 1 when Ellie arrived. And I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I can't say them without getting into spoiler territory for season 3, so if you don't mind those, stick around. But if you do, Just subscribe and come back later. Okay, so initially I was kind of mad that they spoiled the fact that time is turning back and we're going to see everything through Abby's perspective. But once I thought about it for a few hours, I don't really think they could have avoided letting audiences know that Season 3 is Abby's story. Whether it was during the finale or during the promo for Season 3, it would have become super obvious when the trailers for Season 3 don't have Ellie in them at all. So while I understand it, I don't love it. Part of the experience while playing through the POV switch in the game was dealing with that immediate frustration. You don't know why you're playing as Abby, and eventually you learn that it's not just one flashback, but it's an entire half of the game. And going through that in real time is a harrowing experience that no one was prepared for when the game came out. But here, by letting people know that Season 3 is Abby's season, viewing audiences will have time to prepare, to understand, and to put together the pieces. The first thing my girlfriend said after the finale was, "Oh, they're going to make us empathize with her, aren't they?" If the message is that obvious, there won't be close to as much shock value as there was when the game came out. Not to mention that you hate Abby so much more while you're playing the game than when you're watching the show. Controlling a character is just different than watching one on a screen, and playing as the quote-unquote antagonist feels like sacrilege, but you're forced to. I just don't think the television format will capture those same visceral reactions from audiences. I think the show is capable of telling Abby's story even better than the game did, but I'm just not sure how much audiences will care. Whether you love or more likely hate Abby in the game, she makes you feel something. Whereas in the show, that raw emotion doesn't connect in the same way. But maybe this is because I already know everything that's going to happen. Maybe the experience is just different if you've played the game. So I'm really curious to find out what people say when they spend more time with Abby and when the story connects back to where we left off. But as of right now, I find it really hard to rate this season as a unit. I definitely didn't love everything about it, but I will say that this season didn't totally turn me off the show like it did for some. If anything, it left me even more excited to see how they handle the rest of the story. It left me with a curiosity of how audiences will handle it. I do think the showrunners are fighting an uphill battle, but I think they're very well prepared for the challenge and even welcome it. So all in all, if the first season is a 9 out of 10 adaptation, I'd give this season a 7 out of 10. It was really well made, but there were a few too many made-for-TV changes that took me out of the experience. But what did you think? Were you hate watching the entire time, or did you actually give the second season a chance? Let me know in the comments. Please also like this video, subscribe, and stick around for when I relentlessly talk about Superman and Fantastic Four this summer. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.